have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Thursday night, and this is Farage at Large, live from Bournemouth. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Yes, good evening, Farage at Large. We're back here in Bournemouth with an enthusiastic audience. We're going to talk about the local elections, which were a disaster here for the Conservatives, other local issues, Farage to Farage, and joining us on Talking Pints tonight is going to be Harry Redknapp. And will be sung out of the programme, by Right Said Fred with I'm Too Sexy. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Biddlehay.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The top stories on GB News tonight. The Chancellor says the Bank of England's latest interest rate rise will prove challenging for families with mortgages. His comments come after the UK's central bank today raised rates for the 12th time in a row in a further attempt to tackle soaring inflation. The bank's base rate has risen by 0.25 percentage point from 4.25 to 4.5%, and that's the highest level in 15 years. Jeremy Hunt says the measures will help families, though, in the long run.
Although it's obviously good news the bank is not now predicting a recession this year, it's very challenging for families with mortgages to see interest rates go up. But unless we tackle rising prices, the cost of living crisis will just continue, and that's why it is essential we stick to our plan to halve inflation. And if we do that, we can bring certainty back to family finances.
But the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says the rise will be of concern to many British households.
Today will be a day of great anxiety for many families and businesses around the country who are facing the 12th increase in interest rates in just a matter of months. That means higher mortgage costs. Already, people have paid £1 billion more in mortgage repayments compared to where they would have been 6 months ago.
The UK has confirmed it is supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles that it requested for its fight against Russia. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says the donation of Storm Shadow missiles gives Ukraine the best chance to defend themselves. The decision follows Kyiv's repeated pleas for more weapons from the West. Addressing MPs earlier, Ben Wallace also said the United Nations had found Russia had committed war crimes. Pakistan's Supreme Court has ordered the release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan and says his arrest was illegal. Mr Khan was arrested on Tuesday by paramilitary officers in riot gear in what looked like a courtroom. That sparked widespread protests across the country, with more than 1,000 people being arrested, which eventually forced the government to call in the army to help restore order on the streets. Here at home, rail services run by the operator TransPennine Express are to be brought under government control. The Transport Secretary has announced the decision follows continuous cancellations on the line. Mark Harper says the firm's contract won't be extended and it won't be renewed. The Department of Transport will instead take over from May the 28th. The train operator, which covers Northern England and runs in parts of Scotland, saw 1 in 6 services cancelled in March. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. I am here in Bournemouth, in the oldest Royal British Legion club in the country. A place where they're doing magnificent work. They really are here to help people, former servicemen and women who otherwise would be homeless, and I admire them enormously for doing that. Now, of course, we've had the coronation weekend, massive success, but it kind of hid from view what happened in the local elections last week. Well, if the Tories had a bad day across the country, they had in Bournemouth, I think, something facing quite close to being an electoral catastrophe. They did very badly indeed. And since then, we've learned that Rishi Sunak's big promise to get rid of thousands of EU laws suddenly isn't going to happen. And I think in places like Bournemouth, which were solid Brexit voting areas and have been solid Conservative voting areas, there is a real sense of disappointment. Or perhaps I should say that's even verging on anger. And that's what you saw from voters here in Bournemouth last week. Well, who better to have on the programme than the current leader of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council? And I do say current, Philip Broadhead. Welcome to the show. That may not be the kindest introduction, but the numbers are pretty brutal, aren't they? Conservatives down 24 seats in this council. Labour up, the Liberal Democrats up quite considerably. Were you being punished here for what's happened to the Tory party nationally, or for what you've done here locally?
Well, I think we saw across the country, we got a real pummelling almost everywhere you look. We now have 90 councils across the country that are in no overall control. That means nobody's running the show. It ends up with paralysis. Everyone's got a veto, which I think is a bit of self-punishment, actually. But we knocked on a lot of doors and we heard from people. There is a lot of anger out there. There was a message that quite often they want to send to the government. I think the problem with this election is that there were loads of messages that we were hearing. Some people didn't like the direction we're going. Some people don't like what's been happening in government for the last year. We had a similar set of elections back in 2019 where in the local elections people were voting for national issues, but it was pretty clear what those issues were there. Now there's a whole host of them.
Theresa May failing on Brexit.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Of course, within weeks of that, the Brexit Party did rather well in this constituency and elsewhere too. But here's the point. This really is the point. That these results we're comparing against really quite historic lows for the Conservative Party. And across the country, the party's lost a third of its councillors. In Bournemouth, you've lost more than that. Is there any way back?
Yeah, I think there is. I think one of the... Well, let's look at the statistics. we as a party were pummeled. We did really, really poorly. Nobody else really cut through. You only look in the council we're in here, it is going to be a hung council yet again. We saw Labour, they moved forward a little bit, but not that much. If we had the results in these local elections as a general election, we'd have a hung parliament. So Labour haven't moved forward as much as they want. There was a lot of protest voting going on. And to be fair, when we were talking to people on the doorstep, while people were angry, while they wanted to send a message, they were positively saying that at least things have calmed down, they're heading in the right direction, that the 5 priorities that Rishi has put forward probably aren't going to set the world on fire, but are respectful of what people are looking for.
I accept
I think there is
stability. I mean, you know, we had 3 prime ministers and 4 chancellors and 5 education secretaries. I mean, you know, it was pretty... So, no, Rishi's brought stability. Stability in high taxes. Stability in big government. Stability in punishing small business. And now stability in not delivering a proper Brexit. That's not what these voters in Bournemouth want.
Yeah, and that's a challenge that Rishi will have over the next 12 to 18 months before the election. He's put a plan in place for some of the basics. I think we saw with the results across the country, that's probably not quite enough. He will A, need to deliver on them, but B, I think there needs to be a much more refined sense of a positive future. Now, the benefit is, who else is giving that? You know, we've got a council here that might well be run by the Liberal Democrats in a few weeks' time. Do they have a positive vision nationally or locally? So there was a lot of protests going on. I think there's a vacuum there. We can fill it. We've just got to get on and start doing it.
A lot of protest, Philip, but perhaps there's quite a lot to protest about.
Yeah, and we heard that. I think we heard that loud and clear. Now they've got to do something about it.
If we get tactical voting, and there was clearly, here and elsewhere in the local elections, deals being done between Labour and the Lib Dems and Greens in some parts of the country, but if we get big-scale tactical voting at the general election, even here in Bournemouth, you know, Conor Burns, who's the MP for this constituency, if everyone says, right, the way to beat the Tories is to vote Lib Dem, you could even be in trouble here.
Yeah, and we've seen a flavour of that at these elections. There are websites now that are trying to organise the anti-Tory vote or the pro, you know, so it's something that's happened in other parts of the world. It is coming over here. We saw it on a local level through these elections, but I think the slight positive as a party, you know, thinking about my party that we've got, is that I can't see it translating in as quite a refined way in the general election. I'll tell you what, I look here, the number of the seats that you've mentioned, according to the polls, the biggest threat they have would be Labour, and yet in those areas there was quite a big protest vote to independents, other parties. We're not seeing this push towards Labour that would then threaten the general election.
Clearly, Labour...
But it's always a danger.
No, clearly, Labour are not going to win Bournemouth West at the next election. That is perfectly clear. But if all the Labour voters in Bournemouth West say, do you know what? Actually, the Lib Dems have picked a good person, then you could be in trouble.
Yeah, and that's possible.
And remember that just up the road, Eastleigh, Romsey, these are all constituencies within striking distance. Southampton, they've all been Lib Dem in the last 20 years.
They have. What I would say is that there are people that will protest vote at a local election. When it comes to the general election, I think they know what is at stake. And people are a bit more loose, I think, with their votes. They'll lend a vote here or there to a variety of parties at the local elections. I can tell you from knocking on doors, there are some people that will never vote for certain parties when it comes to the general. So we know as a party we've got work to do. We hear the message loud and clear. We've now got to put a positive message for the future.
Give me one big reason why people should think about voting Conservative at the next election. One big reason.
Hassle and the catastrophes that we've had to put up with across a global level. Could you see anybody else doing a better job, be it the pandemic, be it the cost of living crisis? I don't hear any fanfare from all the other parties of big answers to these big problems. So I still believe passionately as a Conservative we're the only party that is able to deal with some of those challenges. And also, you know, let's look at what's coming from the other side. Let's look at what Keir Starmer is saying. I mean, he's got a party that's split.
I know.
You know.
Vote for us, the other lot are worse. I'm bored with that, Philip.
But it's true, Nigel.
I'm bored with it. I'm bored with it.
And I accept. It's not enough, but it's a huge part. It's a huge part.
That's what we've sunk to in British politics. You think we're bad? Have a look at the other lot. We'll see what happens, Philip. You've had a tough time. Thank you for joining me on the programme. In a moment, we're going to have a look at Bournemouth Beach and its potential to be a surfers' paradise. It's never yet been realised. Maybe one day it will. I'll also talk to you about Radio 4's Today programme this morning and what they had to say about GB News. Don't go away.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Bournemouth, it is, without doubt, got one of the best beaches in the country. Miles and miles of sand. It's a fantastic holiday resort. And, of course, you know, the British seaside needs tourism, and it needs it very, very badly. Now, you'll see in high summer, the beaches here absolutely packed. But can you imagine if this place had the waves that they have in North Cornwall and North Devon, what that would do to the economy of the area? Well, one man who knows a fair bit about this subject is Terry Crump. He's a local surfer. He's former South Coast surfing champion many times, I believe, and a local businessman. Terry, you know, you get days, don't you, with a southwesterly wind when there's a big, you know,
big strong current, yeah.
Big strong current coming in, but it doesn't happen very, very often. And I know this place quite well. For the last 20 years, there's been talk that there's going to be a system put in place where Bournemouth gets surf. And the Boscombe Reef was how it all began. Yeah. And I think you get from the audience that millions of pounds were spent and not an awful lot seemed to happen, Terry.
Unfortunately, with a reef, it did work at the start, but it didn't last very long. It was early days. Not many people had made those kind of reefs out in the sea. And it broke down, basically. The foundations or whatever it would have been, whether it was the bags, they just split up and, unfortunately...
So the local council got conned, basically?
Yeah, I don't know. I think in the future someone will build it out of a different material. It will probably work. They make them already now in wave pools and wave parks and stuff like that, which are easier to control. You haven't got the environments you have in the sea, and they work like clockwork all the time, so...
Yeah, but the appeal... Of course, sure, there are wave parks around the country. There's a big one in Kent being built inland at the moment. But the appeal of coming to this beautiful beach in Bournemouth and being able to surf. So there is a sort of lagoon plan now, isn't there?
There's a lagoon, and they're looking at a similar one to the one in Bristol, a wave, which has got one in like Switzerland, France way, and they got another one in Australia. And they work really well. They're brilliant. They're brilliant for every kind of ability of surfing, so you can go all the way through. And the lagoon's exactly the same. Both concepts are very, very good. They're tried and tested. They work really, really well. If they get one here, it'd be amazing for the local economy. I mean, with a reef, even though it didn't work for very long.
How long?
Well, it didn't last a full season, I think. It did boost that whole area. A lot of businesses did well out of that reef just being proposed. A lot of businesses come off the back of that, and a lot of money got pushed into that area, which was one of the bonuses. And I suppose if you're building something from scratch and it's not been done before, you're not always going to get it right first time. So,
no, I get that. I get that. But if somehow this was got right, it would be a massive boost.
Oh yeah, I mean it'd be whether it's the wave pools, the lagoon, or an artificial reef. I think that's probably a no-go at the moment. After what happened in the last one, but the wave pool and the lagoon, if they ever get those put in place in Bournemouth, it'd be brilliant for the local economy. Yeah.
Now you're involved with local business here, as it is, away from surfing. Are you looking forward to a big summer, or is everybody back on cheap flights to Spain and Portugal and elsewhere?
I mean, with us, we can generally, the money's down, there's not as many people coming in. I think a lot of people spent a lot of money through COVID somehow. Whose money, I don't know. But unfortunately, I reckon we'll be slightly down on the years we've had before, but I still think people will come down to Bournemouth. When the sun's out, everyone sort of drives down and enjoys our beaches, which is
so
good.
Come on, give it a plug. Is Bournemouth a good place to come to?
It's an amazing place. The waves get really good at the right times of the year, in the right seasons, and it's all learning to surf, every ability from students all the way through to adults and old people and everything. It's brilliant to surf down here. So come down, go down to the beach, enjoy it.
And I'll ask the crowd: is Bournemouth a good place to come on holiday? Yeah! Well, there you are. I kind of thought, Terry, thank you. I kind of thought they might say that. Now, I regularly listen to BBC Radio 4 in the morning. I like to listen to something that makes me angry and gets me really riled up for the day. As those that have watched this programme or follow my social media will know, there is an annual television and radio awards. Big dinner in London. It's all very self-congratulatory and backslapping, and it's the liberal elite and all the rest of it. And for some reason, my name has made it onto the list of runners and riders. And so I've been asking people to go to the website, and it's tric.org.uk, to vote for me, and those watching this on television can see it. There's even a QR code you can download from your television. The website has crashed a couple of times in the last few days for the sheer number of people actually wanting to vote for me. Wouldn't it be fun if we won and I turned up at that dinner and I ruined the evening for absolutely everybody? But this morning on Radio 4, I heard something that made me even more determined. Jacob Rees-Mogg was on the Radio 4 Today programme being interviewed by Nick Robinson about the fact that these thousands of EU laws that were going to be scrapped are not now being scrapped. And Jacob is pretty blooming angry about it, given that he was the minister that put in place the proposals to get rid of those laws. But this is what Nick Robinson had to say to Jacob Rees-Mogg this morning at 5 to 9. Listen to this.
You didn't want to see him as Prime Minister. You now accuse him of behaving like a Borgia. Is the Conservative Party doomed under his leadership?
No, I want him to succeed. I wanted him to do well in the local elections. This is why I kept quiet on retained EU law until after the local elections were over.
OK. Now, you're now a TV host.
I am on GB News between 8 and 9 o'clock.
Well, I have to tell our audience, because there are not that many people that watch, but you will face a choice.
So, Nick Robinson, How many people would watch you if you didn't work for the BBC? Who the hell do you think you are? The outright arrogance of these people at the BBC, given the fact that we all have to pay all this money to watch them and listen to them every year, is a complete and absolute disgrace. And it makes me even more determined that GB News succeeds as a new channel and that I win those awards this Friday. And tell me, what do you think? What do you all think of the BBC as an audience? Keep it clean, keep it clean. They managed to keep it clean, I'm pleased to say. In a moment, Farage the Farage. I'll be asked by residents of Bournemouth what I think on a range of issues. I've no idea what the questions are. Don't go away.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends were like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's time for Farage the Farage. We've got local residents in Bournemouth with their questions. So without further ado, Gerald is the first one up.
Nigel, if it were 1066 and you were William the Conqueror, given the state of this country, would you invade?
Well, isn't it quite a thought that William the Conqueror was the first king crowned in Westminster Abbey? And 40 coronations on, it was Charles III last Saturday. And I don't know about you, I just felt the whole sense of history of the occasion was truly, truly extraordinary. I still believe we are a very, very great country. I think we're going through a crisis of leadership. I think the rebellion that led to Brexit, which I think I had something to do with, and one or two people in this room had something to do with, and Bournemouth had something to do with. I just don't think the establishment has yet settled down. Hasn't really accepted the fact that we've once again become an independent country, hence what you've seen from Sunak today. So, look, you know what? You can look at things and think, well, it's not going very well, and it isn't going very well, but you remember the 1970s and how bleak things were back in the 1970s, and countries go through good times and bad times. We're going through a not particularly good time at the moment, but I believe it's because of a failure of leadership, not because of its people. Any thoughts?
I think he'd have stayed in France.
Well, you might be right. I don't know. Thank you very much indeed. David is up next.
All right, welcome to Bournemouth.
Thank
Nigel.
you.
OK. You often refer to Trump's bravery. Is it a quality that is lacking in our leaders, which is resulting in the Cabinet and the Conservative Party failing to follow through on the manifesto pledges they made to the electorate?
It's a very good point, David. Bravery is about standing up and saying what you think and what you believe in an effort to get other people to understand what you're saying and to agree with you. And when you say things, they may be a minority position to begin with, but you try to persuade people of your opinion. Cowardice is saying, oh, what does the latest opinion poll say? Oh, we'll say that because it'll make everybody think we're lovely. Leadership isn't necessarily about being liked. Leadership is about being respected. And I can think of people who've led this country over the years who may not have been the easiest human beings, but they were respected as leaders that were bold and took decisions. And the reason I say Trump's brave is because he's had literally everybody against him, including now, it would seem, the judiciary as well. David, frankly, I think we're led by gutless, careerists, globalists, and I'd really hope Brexit would change that. I wanted Brexit to be the beginning of a political revolution in this country, and it simply hasn't happened. What say you?
Well, I agree with you. Right? I wonder, though, if all of that time we spent in the EU has meant that our politicians are so used to just rubber stamping anything, they haven't got a clue on how to actually behave properly.
Well, dare I say, this applies even more to the civil service than it does to our politicians, who appear to be obstructing. I mean, in many cases, obstructing what a government with an 80-seat majority have got, obstructing what the biggest democratic exercise in the history of our country, namely the referendum, was in 2016. And I'm sorry, all this, we can't be rude to civil servants and Dominic Raab has to resign and all that. I'd sack half of them tomorrow, frankly, but there you are.
Totally agree.
Thank you. Maria.
Evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
The government have released a plan for pharmacies to provide antibiotics. Do you feel we'll be at risk from drug-resistant infections in about 10 years' time from excess use of them?
Well, I think even those scientists back in the 1930s who were working together on penicillin were worried even then that the overprescription of these things could lead effectively to them becoming pretty useless. Look, I think that we have a massive crisis in our GP system.
We do.
And at the moment, I'll tell you what I'm more worried about. I'm more worried about people missing scans than I am about people having an extra prescription of antibiotics. And I got a friend of mine this week, someone I know very, very well, and, she's a little bit younger than me. She's been diagnosed with serious throat cancer. You know why? Because for 2 years, she wasn't given a scan. It's an absolute blooming scandal. I'm upset and sad about it. So I get the point. But I think, if you've got a common ailment, rather than going to a GP, go to a pharmacist who can recommend something. And then if the situation is persistent, then go to a GP. I take the point on antibiotics, but to me, getting people to scans, more people to scans, more quickly, I think is even more urgent.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Martin.
Hello, Nigel.
Good evening.
Nigel, do you think Tucker Carlson going to Twitter
signals the end of mainstream news media?
Well, you're asking GB News that question, so it's a tricky one, isn't it? I think it's really interesting. I think, look, we know that there are now an absolute multiplicity of media sources where we can go and pick up opinion, whether it's the podcast we want to listen to or watch, whether it's something on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it may be, and in America, all sorts of alternative broadcast channels. I still think that mainstream broadcasters still have enormous political influence in a way that those that are not don't. But I think Elon Musk is turning Twitter into something really genuinely exciting. The fact that he genuinely believes in free speech, whether you're on the left or the right or the centre. I mean, frankly, the bloke's a blooming hero, as far as I'm concerned, for what he's doing. And I really do believe that. Carlson going there is very bad news for Fox News. Very, very bad news for Fox News indeed, and Rupert Murdoch must be scratching his head about it. Does it spell the end? No, but it spells that the whole thing is changing. And, we here at GB News, we obviously take very seriously our live content, our live output, but equally, I tell you what, in 5 years' time, GB News will be a massive social media channel that happens to have live TV. That's the way that it's changing. And I wish Tucker Carlson all the very best. I genuinely do. He's a friend of mine. Thank you. And finally, Sadie. Hello.
Nigel, are you too sexy for this programme?
Well, it's not often I blush, Sadie, or get embarrassed. Well, we're going to find out later, aren't we? Well, we have. I understand that when Right Said Fred, do the song with which they're most associated, I do understand that it's going to be a slightly updated version. So there we are. But let me ask you, are you enjoying the programme?
I'm very much enjoying it, yes.
And being here for a live event?
Wonderful. I've watched. You were in Exeter. That was a little bit too far. I was glad you came to Bournemouth.
Yeah, well, this is about the 30th, well, in fact, more than 30 that we've done round the country. So we are getting out round the country, and I don't know about you, but I think that standard news channels are pretty repetitive, frankly a bit boring. And we do try and take on serious political issues, and I'm not shy, nor is anybody else at GB News, of giving an opinion. But where else would you get not just Farage the Farage, but in a minute, after the break, Harry Redknapp and Right Said Fred, only on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know, Kate Moss? Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's time for Talking Pints. I'm joined by the legendary Harry Redknapp. Harry, welcome to Talking Pints. Well, I think it's fair to say that Harry Redknapp is a very, very popular figure here in Bournemouth, and we'll find out why over the course of the next few minutes. Harry, was it always going to be football? East End boy, was it always going to be football?
Absolutely, Nigel, yeah. My dad was a good non-league footballer, and it was just, I did nothing at school but play football, really. Loved sport, but football was, I mean, I started training at Tottenham when I was 11. So very early I got spotted by a scout, took me down there. So Tuesday and Thursday nights every week, down to Tottenham training, under the great Bill Nicholson was the manager then.
Yep.
So, but left school at 14 and signed for West Ham.
Were you good at other sports too?
Loved cricket, I loved all the sports, golf is my big passion now, but I'm pretty useless, but I love it,
And you finished up with Spurs, as you say, as a kid, but actually West Ham.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that team?
Oh, fantastic.
That you played in at West Ham.
Great days,
And, I mean... I was going to exaggerate and say half the World Cup side were playing at West Ham.
Boys. I mean, we all came out the youth teams together. They were a couple of years older than me, Bobby Moore, Jeff Hurst, Martin Peters. But the three of the lads all played in that World Cup winning team in '66, which is incredible, really. There are three players from West Ham playing the World Cup winning team. And Bobby was the captain. Jeff scored a hat-trick.
Yep.
And Martin got the other goal. So I think West Ham played a big part in that World Cup win.
Well, we had Jeff Hurst on a few months ago, and he said West Ham won the World Cup. Now,
but to score a hat-trick in the World Cup final, left foot, right foot header, I mean, the perfect hat-trick. It's just unbelievable, wasn't it?
Now, over the years, you had a long time at West Ham. You played at lots of clubs over the years. You played overseas. But then management was the logical next thing to do.
Well, it's like everything. When you finish playing, I have to be truthful. When I finished down here, Nigel, you think, what am I going to do with my life? And I was going to buy a Bournemouth taxi. That was what I was looking for.
Were you really?
I was. Listen, we finished the game with no money. We didn't make any money playing.
Because you came here and played...
I came here and played under John Bond. And,
over, 100 games you played for?
Yeah, I came here and then went out to America and played, came back in the States. You think, what am I going to do now? I'm coming to the end. Couldn't get the money, tried to borrow money from the bank. They were £14,000 in them days to buy a taxi, a Bournemouth taxi plate. But couldn't get the money from the bank or anybody, so didn't do that. And then suddenly an opportunity comes along. Bobby came back from America, Bobby Moore, and he went to Oxford City. And he always said to me, if ever I get a job, Harry, I'd love you to come with me and work with me as my coach. I'd done some coaching out in America when we were playing together. So that was my first step into it, really. And I came back to Bournemouth and stayed here as manager for over 9 years, nearly 10 years, and loved it. I had a great time here. This was a fantastic club for me to manage, It
didn't start so well, did it, with your first...
No, my first game, Lincoln away. I took over. David Webber just left the club and they didn't have a manager. I was like, they asked me to be caretaker manager, and I took over on the Saturday, Lincoln away. And we got beat 9-0. So I thought that's the one and only game. Every game in England was called off that day. The pitches were frozen solid. We couldn't afford... We had long nylon studs and we're playing on a floor like that. And they had the little pimpled boots on. We were 9-0 down with about 25 minutes to go. I thought, this is going to be 16. I'd have took 9 and gone home, you know. But, yeah, so that was the start. But, you know, probably, I don't know how many games after that, 14, 1,500 or whatever I did after. So I managed to survive.
Yeah, but a huge career, actually, as a player and manager
long time,
here in Bournemouth. And now, where you choose to live?
Yeah, I would never moved away. Wherever I managed, we lived here. This was home for us, you know. I came here, we had a club, the club in them days had club houses, and it was £4 a week rent. And we had a little place at Purewell, near Muddyford, Purewell, Christchurch. And that was our first house here. The boys grew up here. My youngest son, Jamie, was born in Barton-on-Sea. And so, yeah, this was home. We love it. I mean, we'd never, ever thought about moving away. It's a special place.
And now a lot of people love it. You know, sandbanks, some of the most expensive.
Yeah, that took off, didn't it? I did that programme about sandbanks. I got the neighbours all started slaughtering me because suddenly we got overrun. They said, it's your fault, that programme. Nobody had ever seen it before. I said, you're not moaning how your house prices have gone up, so you can't have it always.
I think on balance they were probably right, though, weren't they?
Yeah, it did. It suddenly, the amount of people I saw, we'd never seen it before. We saw it on the TV. You know, they'd all flooded down here after lockdown was over. So, yeah, it got very busy.
Yeah, I went skinny dipping there at Causal. I was leading a political party at the time.
Right,
caused hell of a row.
Brilliant.
Caused hell of a row, but then so what? What the hell? I enjoyed it. No, it is a great place to live. But obviously, you know, to go from being a player to being a manager, there's an awful lot of players who think they can become managers afterwards, and frankly, most don't make it, do they?
No. I mean, it's normally quite a short... You know, to have as many years as I did, I was very lucky, you know. But, and I managed some great clubs. I say this was my first club, 10 years nearly, just under 10 years here managing Bournemouth. And people forget now, Bournemouth are in the Premier League. People, they don't realise where the club has been for the last 100 and odd years. I mean, I was in the 4th Division when I arrived here managing. And then we went to Division 3. Got into the Championship. I thought no one will ever do that again. It was a miracle seeing Bournemouth first time in 100 and odd years getting in the Championship. And then Eddie came along, Eddie Howe, and took them into the Premier, and he, you know, slaughtered what I'd done, really.
Well, I think they still love you here for what you did.
Yeah, but no, it was great. So they were great. Great times, you know. But people, I mean, you know, there's 2,500 people coming through the gates back in them days, Nigel, you know. Now you can't get a ticket here for love or money.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
It only holds 11,500 people, but obviously every week is sold out.
You've had an amazing football career. Now, I noticed that Spurs, where you started off playing football, now they're looking for a manager at the moment. And it is interesting, isn't it? We got Neil Warner, we got Roy Hodgson looking after my team, Palace. Yeah. You're about exactly the same. Yeah, you're the same age as these people. So, could we see Harry Redknapp going back to Spurs as manager?
I doubt it. I don't think Daniel would. You know, they're talking about Pochettino, but it looks like he's not going to get it. Exactly. I think once they let you go, they realise. I think they're. You know, they wouldn't be seen to asking you to go back. I think they'd be.
It's a different question. Would you like the job back?
Of course, I would take it. I'd go anywhere. I love it.
Redknapp wants to go back to Spurs. There we are.
Anywhere, I'd go anywhere. Listen, it ain't the money. It's the buzz. I love it. It's just. You know, that winning on a Saturday is a fantastic.
And what's the skill you need? You got those young, fit, motivated young guys. What's the great skill a manager needs?
Well, the first thing is sign good players. If you've got good players, it's an easy job. When you've got good pros in that dressing room, good players, good professionals who want to do well, want to play, you know, want to play for the club, it's not that difficult. Getting the best out of them, massaging their egos, keeping them happy. It's, you know, telling them how good they are rather than how useless they are. Keep encouraging them. Get the best out, you know yourself, get the best out of people.
And discipline?
Of course you'd have to have discipline. Yeah, you can't, otherwise they'll walk all over you. So it's that, you know, it's that balancing act.
Are you a soft manager, a hard manager?
No, it depends, really. If people take liberties with me, then I can be the same as anybody, you know. I treat them fantastically well and look after them, and, you know, if they want, whatever they want, if I can help them, I do. But if they take liberties with me, then I won't give them too many chances.
Well, that's the message to you players at Spurs, because Redknapp could be coming back. Harry, outside of football, like all of us, you've had some fantastic successes in life. Actually, I'll stay on football. How the hell did you get Portsmouth to win the FA Cup?
Well, that was a great time as well.
How did you manage that?
Well, I went there. They were struggling when I went there at the bottom of the Championship, and I just, brought some good players in. I signed a fella called Paul Merson, who was an amazing player at that level in the Championship. He got us promoted. And then we had a great cup run. Went to Old Trafford, had to beat Man United on the way, which is never easy. Beat them in the quarterfinals. So yeah, it was a great experience going to Wembley. Having watched the cup final as a kid and seeing the man in the white shirt, in the white suit, singing "Abide with Me," it was just always special, wasn't it? The FA Cup final was the big. Yeah. But now I think it's been devalued an awful lot. Now.
I think it's a shame, isn't it?
It's a shame. We played the games all odd times. The cup finals played at a strange time. It just lost. People play reserve teams in it now quite often because they're more bothered about trying to get in the top four.
It's money in the Premiership, I guess.
Yeah.
As I say, outside of football, you've had some tough times. The whole tax evasion case in 2012.
Yeah.
That must have been real stress.
Oh, a nightmare. I dragged on for 5 years. When you look back at it, it was over. I think it was over £10,000 of income tax. I think I lost more than that in Newbury the Saturday before. But no, not joking aside. No, it was farcical, really, and it got what it deserved.
But you finished up there, in a court of law.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
Had it gone wrong?
Yeah. Could have gone wrong, and if it does, you're bang in trouble. But no, what happened? We had to tell people. The police came. They were looking at every manager and every chief executive and every person involved in football at the time with the deals, And I told them that I had a bank account in Monaco. I didn't know where it was. Mr. Mandrick had opened it. And if you speak to him, he'll tell you where the bank account was. You don't rob a bank and go and tell the police, well, it's in a bank in Monaco. You don't. But that's what started it all, and it went from there.
But it was the use of that word Monaco, and they assumed it was dodgy, and the press gave you...
Yeah.
My goodness me. How have you found, over the years... Do you just accept the rough with the smooth with the press, or,
of course.
Or do they hack you off sometimes?
I don't read it. Do the best? I remember Alex Ferguson one day said, "Look, if you don't want to see anything bad, then don't read the papers." And I don't do social media, Nigel. I don't do it. I'm not interested really. Yeah. What people say, whatever. I just know who I am and what I do, my family, and my life. Everyone's got. There's always people out there wanting to knock you. I don't care who you are and what you do in your life.
Not reading the newspapers was a trick I had to use many times as UKIP leader, and I'm sure you did at times, and it worked.
Don't buy it if you don't want to know what's,
And Harry, you're amazing celebrity. You've appeared in EastEnders, of course. You went into the jungle, you won it, everyone loved you. But the one thing I think that comes through all of this, and you talk about her a hell of a lot, is Sandra and what Sandra's going to think.
Oh, yeah.
And you've been married since 1968.
Yeah. Since we were going out, since we were just 17, so, yeah, we've been together all our lives, really, I was a young footballer. She didn't have a clue about football. She don't go to football now. She'd never been very keen on football, but she was a hairdresser. And we met, went out, and never been apart.
Well, do you know what? I think you're a very, very good role model to a lot of people in this country. You've had one of the most successful marriages, an amazing career in football. And, Harry, you've got something, because everyone seems to love you.
Well, be nice to people on the way up, because you meet them on the way down. That was the first bit of advice I ever had. And I treat everybody the same. I'd give everybody my time. It don't cost nothing, does it?
Well,
to
what
be nice.
An absolute pleasure to have you on Talking Pints. Harry Redknapp, everybody. Right, and now we have, for the end of the show, we've got the boys. Yeah, we've got Richard and Fred Fairbrass. Right said Fred, who, of course, shot to fame. It seemed you shot to fame back in the 90s. Did it happen overnight?
No. Took a long time. Yeah, our first gig was probably 1978. Yeah.
Right.
Something like that. First tour was 78, yeah. And then we just did pub gigs and stuff for years and years and years.
Yeah. And then suddenly this record appears.
Yeah, we did this record because we thought it was funny and because we knew that it just made us laugh. We didn't think it was any good, actually. We just kind of
Every record company hated it.
Yeah, every record company hated it. And, it's just... we just liked it. I can't explain it, really. But we did know that there was nothing else like it. That's
and you went to #1 in America.
Yeah.
and it's still being used in adverts and everyone knows it, and when they hear it, they smile. But I hear you've got a new album coming out.
We have. Yep, brand new album out on June 2nd, and it partly re-records and partly new tracks. And we were approached, excuse me, we were approached by a company called Plastic Head, who are an independent distribution company.
Yep.
And they came up with the idea, so we're very grateful for the opportunity. Yeah.
And we're really happy with it, actually. Some of the re-records we've done are really fresh, I think, and because the sounds have moved on to such a degree since we started, and that was really exciting.
And when's the album out? Where do we find it?
June 2nd. June 2nd, across all platforms, as usual. Yep.
Well, that's absolutely superb. And just finally, quickly, you were very, very naughty boys.
Were we?
Because you criticised the government about repeated lockdowns.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. We had made the mistake of voicing an opinion.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that now.
Oh, dear.
You mustn't do that.
World, you can't do that.
Mustn't do that.
Yeah, mustn't do that. And we went to a demo, one of the first demos in Trafalgar Square, and Piers Morgan just threw his toys out the pram.
He got very upset.
He got really upset, and that's when I suddenly thought, you know the old saying, if you're over the target, that's when you get in flak.
Yes.
And that's when I knew. Yeah, that was a sign, really.
One day it'll be Lord Piers Morgan of lockdown. I'm quite certain of that. So, are you going back on tour?
Yeah,
What's
we'll go
the
back
plan?
on the road towards the end of the year, and then probably starting next spring as well. Yep.
Well, it's brilliant. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much.
It's a song that makes everyone smile. So I think there's only one thing for it, really, and that is, take it away, guys.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt, so sexy it hurts. I'm too sexy for Milan, too sexy for Milan, New York and Japan, too sexy for Japan, New York and Birmingham. I'm too sexy for your party, too sexy for your party, no way I'm disco dancing. Oh, Nigel's a model, you know what I mean, and he does his little turn on the catwalk. Yeah, on the catwalk, yeah, he shakes his little tush on the catwalk. I'm too sexy for my car, too sexy for my car, too sexy by far. And I'm too sexy for my hat, too sexy for my hat, what you think about that? Oh, I'm a model, you know what I mean, and he does his little turn on the catwalk. Yeah, on the catwalk, Nigel does his little turn on the catwalk. Too sexy for my, too sexy for my, too sexy for my. Nigel's a model, you know what I mean, and he does his little turn on the catwalk. Now on the catwalk, yeah, he does his little turn on the catwalk. Get him off, Nigel. I'm too sexy for my cat, too sexy for my cat, poor pussy cat. I'm too sexy for my love, too sexy for my love, love's going to leave me.
Hello and welcome to the GB News forecast from me, Aidan McGivern at the Met Office. Showers easing overnight, drier for most, but some low cloud will make an appearance from the east. However, for the next few hours, still some showers about, and there have been some lively downpours throughout Thursday because of an area of low pressure. Higher pressure is now arriving from the northwest. That's going to bring a settled interlude through Friday and into the start of the weekend. Not entirely clear, though. Once the showers have eased overnight, we're going to see low cloud creep in from the North Sea, and that's going to bring some drizzle to North Sea coasts and eastern hills. A lot of mist and murk out there. In the west, that's where we'll keep some clearer skies and also a few mist patches for Northern Ireland, with temperatures dipping into the mid-single figures. But actually, plenty of sunshine for Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales. Low cloud elsewhere, but that low cloud will be nibbled away. It will be pushed back to the coast through the day. Brighter skies will develop inland. One exception, southeast England, where there will be an area of patchy rain and drizzle appear, and it will feel cold with the wind coming from the North Sea. The highest temperatures will be further west with high teens, but also for Wales and the southwest, that warmth perhaps setting off 1 or 2 showers. Nowhere near on the scale that we've seen this week, however. They'll disappear through the evening, and then the low cloud pushes back westwards again, this time mostly affecting England, some southeastern parts of Scotland, but otherwise clear spells for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland through the night. A few mist patches and temperatures into the low single figures in some sheltered spots. So a bit of a cold start here on Saturday, but it will soon warm up because actually for Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, parts of West Wales and the south will see plenty of sunny spells. In between, a lot of low cloud persisting into the afternoon, but even here, much of that will lift and break. So for many, Saturday is a fine day. Sunny spells and feeling warm in that sunshine.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of